Close by to where it started.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, which island?
Close by to it.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm assuming it's Mexican. Coloring of the building.
I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Casual Cabanas.
I'm good. Thank you.
I hear it's pretty good, actually.
What? Yeah, I had a heart surgery. So,
Check
good.
it out.
On the road to healing, and
Actually, years ago,
so,
when we went
yeah.
to college, I lived
Yeah, my doctors were great.
with two of
I'll
my
tell you who was
buddies.
great. I'm a nurse.
I have a house right next to the fire.
Unbelievable. No Steve, no
Did,
Michael.
okay.
Yeah, I think you're right here.
So yeah, it's
Good.
really good.
Hey, Tom, how are you? How's it going? It's,
Everyone got promoted tonight.
What?
Everybody got promoted tonight.
We got some
So like, what's happening?
some travelers.
yeah, because
Great time.
like I said, Franz is completely overwhelmed. And through no fault of his own. It's just, wait.
They always have high hopes.
Did you talk to the boss today? My boss. No, my boss, Sharon. Okay, good, okay. Yeah. Yes, they've
Really
been
quickly,
talking.
He says we made
when you're in hospital patients, I pray it all.
with the calling the Bailey Hines plan.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
I just want to lock them
We
in.
barely make it. Yeah.
So a light bulb doesn't go off in
that's
there.
correct.
Mr. Michael and who?
Yeah, no, I know.
We're gonna make it now. Yeah.
I think I mentioned she wants to watch insurance. I'm not counsel of record.
Sam, are we good?
You know,
Sam.
I talked to them today. Getting names for experts.
Yes. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Borough Council meeting for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 to order. Notice of this meeting was published in the official newspapers and prominently posted in Borough Hall and filed with the municipal clerk in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Bailey, would you lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. Laura, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Koth,
Here.
Mr. Carnaval, and Mr. Staff are not here this evening. Mr. Tashian?
Here.
Mr. Kern?
Here.
Mr. Gullo?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Okay, I would ask Administrator Mr. Hines to introduce our next guest, who will be making a presentation on the historic rail station.
Mr. Mayor, we have with us Mr. Hatch, who is a principal in the firm of Clark, Catton, and Hintz. He's worked over the past several months to prepare a presentation for the preservation of the Oradell train station. This study will be used as the basis for an application to the New Jersey Historical Trust Fund in April, if the council decides to proceed after listening to his presentation. So I introduce Mr. Hatch. Come to the desk. John Hatch, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, John.
I'm going to sit here. Is that okay? And
Absolutely.
I'll run through the slides. Thank you. What we were asked to do was to complete a preservation plan for the Oradell train station. As Mr. Hines said, I am a principal with Clark, Catton, Hintz. We're architects, planners, landscape architects, and historic preservation consultants. We are based in Trenton. And also on the consultant team, we had a structural engineer, Harrison Hamnet, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineers, Kelter and Gilligo, and cost estimators, Becker and Frondorf. Tonight I'm just going to briefly remind everybody about the history of the station, talk a bit about its current conditions. We developed some concept plans based on some thoughts about the building. We have prepared a cost estimate based on the existing conditions that we found. There's necessary work as we've prioritized it, and then talk about next steps. So with that, everybody knows where the station is at the corner of Oradell and Maple Avenues. It is indeed a historic structure. It is a lovely Queen Anne structure. It is listed on the state and national registers of historic places since 1984. It's part of a thematic nomination for historic operating railroad stations. A brief timeline: the train service began in Oradell in 1870. Along with the first station building that was built in 1870, and around that location, a hotel and stores started to be built up, perhaps literally putting Oradell on the map. In 1890, because of increased use of the train line, the current station was constructed, and as I said, in the elaborate and lovely Queen Anne style. By 1930, the population of Oradell had doubled to 2,000 people, perhaps in part due to the train connection. But also at that time, the train companies that were running the trains were running to financial difficulties. And by the 1950s, the train station was in disrepair and had been vandalized. And I think with great forethought, the borough purchased the station in 1955 and completed renovations in the early 1960s. The original uses were, of course, still a waiting room, but apparently there were also some public events. Things like art openings and other community events took place in the train station. In 1985, there was another renovation, and the bulk of the train station was converted to retail use. In 2003, there was another major renovation. The porte cochere, which had been taken off, it was in such poor condition in the 1950s, was then reconstructed, and many of the missing decorative features, especially in the exterior, were restored, reconstructed. And then in 2011, a preservation plan, the first preservation plan for the building, was completed, and then this is the update to that preservation plan. So I'll just run through some slides just to remind folks about the condition of the building and just, again, how beautiful it is. So Queen Anne style, it's a very elaborate Victorian style. Characteristics include elaborate roof shapes and lots of articulation on the exterior. And exterior features that you can see on the building are all those finials running along the roof edges, and stained glass windows, etc. So overall, the building, I will say, is in, especially considering buildings that we have dealt with, is in fair to good condition. So there are some things that obviously need to be taken care of at this point, but it's in overall pretty good condition. Really what's happened is now that a lot of the exterior finishes are worn. There's some rotting exterior woodwork, not a whole lot, but some. You can see on the porte cochere on the kind of the top right-hand image, a truck clipped that, so that needs to be repaired. Not major damage, but some. The south elevation, similar. The roof, probably in the next 5 years or 5 to 10 years, will probably need to be replaced. It is not currently leaking at the moment that we know of. It's a cedar shake roof. On this side, you can get a sense of the porch flooring, which is now pretty worn. There's some of the boards will need to be replaced, but it certainly needs to be prepared and repainted. One of the issues is that the handrails along the steps, and then especially on the edge of the porch, don't meet current code, both in terms of height, and they're also quite open, so people, you can kind of fall through them. And you can see there the porch, the steps down to the tracks also are quite worn. The south elevation, this in particular, these railings are where they're also, not only don't they meet current code, but they're quite loose, so that needs to be taken care of right away. And you can see, again, some additional exterior damage. And then that kind of Bilco door to the basement is leaking, so that will need to be taken care of at some point as well. The north, similar issues. The one other thing is here, the dirt is actually a little bit too high up against the building, is causing some rot to the clapboard. On the interior generally is in pretty good shape. I'll say perhaps except for the basement. There are definitely water issues in the basement. The concrete floor needs to be patched and repaired. The walls need some repointing. There is some water infiltration, not a huge amount, but some water infiltration. And we understand that when the river is high, occasionally there's backup into from the storm drain into the basement. So that's one of the things that needs to be have some additional investigation to see what the issue with that line is, if it's not draining properly, what the connections are, why that's happening. We're recommending that a new sump pump be put in the basement, in addition to other repairs. There had been kind of a ceiling coating. Most of that is down, so we're recommending that be replaced. The retail area is in good shape. The tenant there is taking very good care of their space. The primary issue here is that the restroom, which is lovely, is not ADA accessible. So that's something that ought to be addressed. There are minor kind of wear and tear issues, and kind of longer term, the lighting in general is sort of is generally fluorescent. So replacing the building systems, the HVAC, and the lighting with more efficient systems is recommended in the medium to longer term. The waiting area is quite small, and I would say inconvenient for commuters. There is you'll see over here, there's a electric panel that is not secured, so that's a recommendation that ought to be secured. There's also an electric shutoff on the exterior that has reached the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced and also secured. There is a kind of a little, I guess it was a former ticket office that's now used for storage. That seems kind of a misuse of space. And then, of course, the restroom, which is in good condition, is also not ADA accessible. At some point, also, a drop ceiling was put in there, and it's okay. It's not in great shape, but it would be nice if the original plaster ceiling were repaired and exposed. The baggage or room is that separate little building over there that was constructed a little bit later. That is in generally good condition on the inside. That's used as office and storage for the retail folks. So the floor plan here, I'm just going to see if I can point out a couple things. So again, you can see just how small and cramped the waiting room is. It's really not much of a waiting room. Actually, one of the other emergent issues is part of the bench there needs to be repaired, and that ought to be done quickly. And a lot of it is taken up with this office or storage area. You can see the restrooms that serve both the waiting area and the retail area are not accessible. But those are the main plan issues. And it really is a very, very handsome structure. It was fun for us to draw the elevations. So part of what we did in the report is we pointed out issues with the building, and then those were prioritized. So there are a couple of emergent things. The loose handrails ought to be tightened and repaired. The bench in the waiting room needs to be reinforced and repaired. We then listed repairs that we're thinking ought to be taken care of in the next couple of years. That includes repairing and repainting the porch floor, the siding and trim, and we think also you ought to make the exterior handrails code compliant and make them appropriate to the style of the building. The exterior doors, I forgot to point it out, are in pretty good shape. The two issues are that the exterior doors don't have ADA compliant hardware, and the thresholds, while the interior floor and the exterior porch floor and the walkways are at the same level, the thresholds are quite prominent, so they technically also don't meet ADA requirements. Some other things, repairing the panel doors that are not operable, but to the baggage room, those have some damage. In the basement, patching and repairing the floor, repointing and sealing the walls, installing ventilation and some dehumidification in the basement. There's an electrical shutoff, which I pointed out, I mentioned on the exterior that ought to be replaced. The electric panels on the interior should be locked and made secure. A sump pump to deal with water in the basement, and also explore issues with the below-grade piping. Short term, 3 to 5 years-ish, is when we think probably the cedar shake roof is going to reach the end of its useful life. The exterior steps to the tracks, some of those treads are going to have to be replaced. The exterior windows are going to need to be repaired and repainted at that point, checking the chimneys, the interior doors, the basement ceiling, that kind of Bilco door to the exterior. And we're suggesting also that at some point, could be sooner, later, but to consider figuring out how to make the restrooms handicap accessible, ADA accessible. The HVAC is going to reach the end of its useful life, so it's a good time to make it energy efficient, and the lighting that I mentioned as well. Then there's a few items that are really longer term. The building is not required, given its size, to be fully sprinklered, but we're making that long-term recommendation because it is a completely wood structure and because it's so kind of architecturally significant. We think we would recommend installing a full sprinkler system. There's also then interpretive opportunities to talk about the history of the building, the history of the town, at various places in the building. We, as part of our preservation plan, we took a shot at a couple of concept plans. These are really discussion points of I would say, a way to address the accessibility and the really small, awkwardly shaped waiting room. So those were the two goals, addressing the waiting room and the accessibility for the restrooms. So in this, what we did was we took, I'm sorry?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Because of the age of the building, isn't there a waiver on the ADA compliance for that?
In certain aspects of it, yes, but it's a public building, and so the way the code reads is as you're doing work on it, a certain percentage of the work, if it's not ADA accessible, needs to address accessibility. So some of what I'm showing here is probably not required, but it's taking a shot at making it fully accessible. It is probably, as a public space that's owned by the borough, long term, I think policy-wise, it's probably a good direction to be heading in. Now, it should be done carefully, so you're not damaging historic fabric, and it's not, if there are significant spaces, that you're not damaging them. Now, there's been a fair amount of renovation. This originally, it was a single big waiting room, and so when renovations were done, it was turned into retail space, and the bathrooms were added on the inside. So there's already been some fussing done with it, which gives you a little bit more leeway when you're dealing with future renovations.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what it's showing is making the waiting room a bit more rational. So taking out that kind of storage room and taking out the inaccessible restroom. So you have a single space and with benches around it. What this then allows you to do in the retail space, make that a little bit larger, and you could put an accessible restroom there if you wanted. And then you could do either 1 or 2 single-user accessible restrooms that would take up a portion of that baggage room and would then be available for commuters to use. And so we've showed them slightly different ways, but it's really variations on a theme. But really the point of the concept plan is to provide some discussion for the borough and a way to think about providing the accessibility.
So you're taking away the office to expand the waiting room, is that?
Which office? So there was
office.
a kind of storage room over here. Can you see my? Oh, well, maybe you're not seeing my cursor, are you? That's interesting. So how do I show that?
You're taking away office space to provide the bathrooms more accessible to the outside, it looks like.
Yeah.
And a larger waiting room.
And a larger waiting room,
Well,
exactly.
Yeah, by
Yeah.
getting rid of that storage area.
Thank you.
Space.
What is the difference between 1 and 2?
They're really so minor. It was one was taking advantage, at least of there is a door opening and a window opening, and it was trying to take advantage of those openings, but it meant that the plumbing is not backed up to each other, which was a little bit added costs and not as convenient. So the other one was just looking, all right, you kind of abandon those original openings and back up the plumbing to each other. But it's really variations, very minor variations on a theme.
Is there a ramp on these drawings for?
There isn't. So the access from the west side into the waiting room, if you address the thresholds, would be accessible. So.
Could you speak about the basement? I've never been down there. Does it run the length of the building? You're able to stand, or is it? I'm assuming it's probably in pretty bad shape. But is there an opportunity for storage or office or anything like that? It looks like I can't tell.
Yeah, you can stand up, and I bump my head on maybe on structure, but also on anything else that's running down there. But you can walk around, and it is used for storage, I guess, for Public Works, has some stuff down there. Because I had not contemplated putting anything more permanent in there, just because there are some water issues, and you also have to take steps down into it to get into it, and it's quite an awkward, that entry into it is quite awkward at this point. So this is the one entry.
It's simply the Bilko door?
Yeah.
So nothing from inside.
Nothing from inside, no.
John, what about when you were looking at the two options and reimagining the retail space versus the commuter space? I actually commute into the city 4 days a week, and I won't go in there just because the space is awkward. It's just not functional. Obviously, if it's cold, maybe I will go in there. Where it is, it's obviously on the northern end of the station, and the majority of the track and platform is obviously more on the southern part. Was there any consideration of flopping the retail space with the commuter lobby and giving a little bit more room and visibility to the track and the train? I'm not asking for it, but I'm just other considerations.
We didn't, but again, this was very preliminary and sort of an initial guess at it. It's certainly an option. What we were trying to do kind of minimal changes to the building, which is why we didn't sort of switch too much around. But if the borough wanted to proceed, I think there would be a more in-depth programming discussion about what really makes sense for the building in the short term, and if there are other long-term uses for it or changes to it that you want to stay flexible for. That I think that's what would happen. So.
Yeah, and being respectful to the current tenant, who's amazing. So I wouldn't want to disrupt his business because he's been such a great steward to the community and the town. I'm just thinking about other purposes, because even by removing that storage space in the commuter area, it's still dark, dungy, and it's not that large of a space.
I think it will be a lot better.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is a little bit.
Right.
It would be really nice to be at the other end and have views up the tracks and all of that.
Right.
That actually would be really, really nice.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
John, what does being on the list of historic places, what is that? How does that limit us, or flexibility, or is it exterior or interior, or the benefits?
It's the building. So there are being listed on the State National Registers of Historic Places means for a municipality that if you're going to do work on it, it has to get reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office. And that is if you're using local money, state money, or federal money. So that's essentially that's the a little bit added review that happens for buildings on the State National Register. It does also make you eligible so that you can apply for grants like the grants from the New Jersey Historic Trust.
But it doesn't prohibit, does it specifically prohibit changing windows or the exterior?
It doesn't prohibit it, but it does mean that it'll get reviewed to see if it's appropriate, historically appropriate. But as I was saying also, it makes you eligible to apply for the Historic Trust grants, and those are grants ranging from grants that you can use for the preservation plan or for construction drawings, all the way through capital grants. The maximum grant is a $750,000 grant, and that's a one-to-one match. There needs to be other source or sources of funds that match that 750. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But if you are not listed, you could not apply for those grants.
Just one last question. You mentioned the stained glass windows. In your professional expertise, you said they're in good condition.
Yeah, they're
they could be restored. And
yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. Okay, so we did, as part of the preservation plan, we did take the existing conditions and then, just for the sake of argument, the reconfiguration plan that we did and had that, did a cost estimate for it. And so, and had it split out into emergent, immediate, short, and long term, just to give you some sense. So the way this works is really you want to look at the cost with markups, because that is it includes the contractor's overhead and profit, it includes general conditions, and it includes some contingencies. So that's what you want to be looking at. And I'm going to give you a heads up because I got an email about this today. It looks like construction costs, because of the tariffs, are going to be increasing in the next few weeks by something like at least 12%. Whoa. Materials. So I was pretty shocked to get that email. So already material costs are coming in with vendors warning contractors about cost increases. In any case, so if you did everything that we showed, all of the conditions that we identified, plus that reconfiguration with the restrooms, it would be something like an $800,000 total project, plus then there's some soft costs that are not shown here. The design costs would be in addition to that. There are certainly a number of ways you could proceed. The preservation plan, the draft has been submitted to the borough and to the Historic Preservation Office. We're assuming there's going to be some comments back and that we're going to make some adjustments to the plan. So to say it's complete, I guess a draft is complete at this point. But as soon as we get comments back, it'll just take a week or two to make the changes. If you wanted to pursue a grant application from the New Jersey Historic Trust, the grant round happens once a year, and it's usually to the third week in April. This year, I believe it's due April 24th. And again, there's a wide range of grants that you could apply for, ranging from something called historic site management grants, which you could use for preparing the construction documents, and that is a 3-to-1 grant. So for every dollar that the borough provides in some way, the trust provides $3. So an $80,000 set of construction documents, the borough's tab would be $20,000, and the trust would provide $60,000, assuming it was a successful grant application. There are capital grants for a project. If you were to do the full project, the $800,000-ish project, that would be a capital level 2 grant, and that is a 1-to-1 match. So for every dollar that the trust provides, up to $750,000, the borough would be responsible for finding the match to that. So that if it's an $800,000 project, it's $400,000 from the trust and $400,000 from other sources that the borough identifies. Again, it is a competitive grant round. The historic site, generally speaking, the historic site management grants, a higher percentage of those grant applications tend to be funded because they're smaller grants. And also the trust likes to fund preservation planning. The other grants, the capital grants, there are quite competitive. The trust has typically each year something like $10 million to provide grants for, but it gets many, many applications, so more dollars than the $10 million. The grant announcements, so the grant due date is end of April. The grant announcements happen in October. So that was my presentation.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I don't know if it's appropriate to, have full conversation right this second, because this is a lot for everybody to digest and think about. But we do have some upcoming deadlines with regard to how we would like to proceed. And I think the two paths that John clearly identified were A, you can submit for one grant program and prepare the plans and specifications to do the work and get $3 for every dollar we spend, which would not allow us to apply for capital this year. But, John, one question I had is, what do you think the duration would be to prepare the necessary plans and specifications to undertake the work?
I would say 6 or 7 months, something like that.
So that's into Q3 of this year. So, one of the things to think about it is, can we maximize the grant funding the borough is going to receive by tailoring our grant application for preparing plans and specifications that will take into most likely October to prepare. That by teeing us up to submit for the capital grant next year, which is a 1-to-1 match, I think I heard. And obviously, 50 cents on the dollar is better than nothing, but it might behoove us to consider the route of, while this may not go as fast as we would like, we can maximize the amount of grant funding we're receiving. And I would think smaller grants are probably more widely approved than the larger ones that come in with big ticket items for a full $750. No matter how you slice it, you're not hearing until October anyway about whether we get a grant, regardless of which one we apply for. The beauty is, I believe that we would not. So in the scenario where we applied for the grant to produce the construction documents and specifications, we wouldn't have to necessarily wait until we hear whether or not we want the grant. We could proceed at risk because there's funding for this already. And I believe that if awarded the grant, we can basically reimburse ourselves for that cost. So we're not losing any ground. We're proceeding in an expeditious way, maximizing the amount of grant funding we're eligible for. And then, once we have a more refined budget and a set of plans that are actionable, we can decide whether or not we want to wait until the April of 2026 to apply for the larger grant, or whether we want to fund it, or whether there are other grants. It was a question I was going to ask John, but it's escaping my mind. So anyway, I think that's where we're at, and that's the direction that John and his team need from us in terms of how we would like them to proceed with regard to this year's grant application. I know what the question was. John, if we prepared these documents, let's say we successfully got a grant, we did everything we're hoping to do, do we have to wait until we have applied for the grant in the next funding round in order to advance the project? Or can we start if we have funding in place and perhaps reimburse ourselves, much like the first opportunity?
You can start a portion of the work.
Okay.
So this is one thing that I will look up tomorrow and get back to you on. I don't know if I copied that.
So confirming tomorrow is
so
fine.
I probably have to read a little bit more. So interestingly, it looks like even at the time of the application, you can have spent up to, I'm going to have to confirm, but it looks like up to 25% of the project cost, which is interesting.
All right. So, if we want to have some dialogue on this now, we do have some time. We can think about this between now and the next meeting in order to give his team direction. But, just thoughts are we have a path to be able to maximize available grant funding. I don't think it will take much longer, right, by waiting till 2026 for the larger grant application, because we're going to be doing the work to get us to that point anyway. So just something to think about.
Yeah, given John's timeline, I think we really have a 3 to 5 year window. The majority of the work really is in that short-term 3 to 5 window. And, I think that we do have some time on our side. And I also suggest maybe if we know we're going to spend some of that money, even if it's a matching grant, that maybe we can start a sinking fund in advance to prepare ourselves.
We can talk about the finances when we get to that point in terms of which way would be the best to proceed. But anybody have any initial thoughts, or you want to digest this?
I've got one maybe more comment, and I don't want to prolong it. I would like to have at least some public input. I'm not saying like formal, waiting period or, comment period, but it's changed. Commuting's changed. We have younger families. It's not utilized every day. I'm probably an exception more than I am, the norm. I'd like to have a little bit of community feedback, whether it's a week, a 2 week, a month, whatever it might be, to have some people weigh in. You know, there's a lot of people, we wait around all day long.
So I think you're going to get that in the design process, Ted.
No, that's fine. I'm talking about functionality because that may impact what the design might be.
No, I get it. But again, I think that comes out of the design process. Once they're authorized to proceed, there's going to be a public meeting. I would assume there's public input.
Or several.
Right.
I think it's good. I think having programming discussions about how to use it, both in the short and long term, are going to be really important. So for this preservation plan, I mean, these were very conceptual. It was kind of to get something on the boards. But I think I think there will be a conceptual design and programming part of the design process, and as much public input as you would like.
Good.
So
Okay.
So I think the thing he just really needs direction on is, do we want to advance?
Right.
Do we want to let it fall down? You know, how do we want to advance?
Right.
And then, you know, once we get him that direction, I think there's a whole process that we haven't even really spoke about what's involved with that would, you know, fill up 6 months of John's time for him and his team to be able to get us a product that we think would best serve Oradell.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious the building's in disrepair and needs some help. And it would make sense, we need those construction documents prior to even if we were to apply for the large grant, right? We would need to have the plans.
you could either
simultaneously, or?
Yeah, you could either lump them together into one big grant application, or you could do it, as the mayor's suggesting, do the construction documents with a 3-to-1 grant application, and then do the capital
that would be
work.
the 3-for-1, so it would seem to be that would be the prudent way to go if we're going to end up in the same place, right? Rather than 1-for-1.
Right. So one last question, just to think through again, the maximizing of available funding. Can you take 2 bites at the apple for a project? Can I apply for the bigger grant this year and then apply again next year and aggregate the 2 in order to undertake the project?
So the answer is yes.
Asking the larger twice is the question.
So what you can, there are sites that have done a capital grant application, and then not necessarily the following year, but maybe a few years later, there's some other aspect of the plan that they want to complete and do a separate capital grant application. The Historic Trust has also set up multi-year, multi-phase projects. So another way that you could do it, if I'm not sure here, so we've done this a number of times. So for instance, the Hoboken Public Library, we did a multi-year, multi-phase application, phase 1, but we submitted the entire application at the same time. It ended up being, I think it was a 3-year phase project, so a total of $2.2 million from the trust, with 2.2-ish million coming from the borough. 3rd floor, we finished. We're about to do the 2nd and 1st floor. So it was multi-phase. So you can also do it that way. With this project, I'd have to think about it. I don't know if there's an advantage to it. The reason why the trust set up the multi-phase, multi-year projects was that there were large buildings, large sites, that $750,000 wouldn't go that far, and they would be very long projects. So they wanted to support those. Does that help?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so for the council's consideration, the reason I asked the question is, if you go for the 3-to-1 in 1 year and go for the larger in a second, you've assured yourself 2 bites at the apple. In grant programs, they like to be able to spread money around versus giving larger sums to a lesser group on the list. They like to try and fund as many projects as feasible. So I'm just saying, I think we'd be better positioned towards receiving both grants And if you did it at one shot, using John's example of that 80,000, where we're paying a quarter of that, that now comes out of the larger grant. Where if we apply in two different applications, it's not, right? So we'd be shortchanging ourselves 80,000 in a capital side of undertaking the project if we coupled that as one larger grant versus doing the smaller grant to prepare the documents and getting us to a place where we want to act going forward. So,
and I'll just add to that. So I did sit on the Historic Trust Board for a number of years, so was part of these discussions. The trust really is encouraging towns and organizations to do the preservation planning. So they like to, for appropriate sites, they like to fund preservation plans, and they like to fund other planning documents because it means that that the organization or the town is doing the right preparation work. So that's also why there tends to be a higher percentage of those grant applications that are funded. Now, I don't want to. None of this is guaranteed. It all depends on how many applications there are. It is competitive, but just to give a little bit of context about how the trust board thinks about it.
Thank you.
Would there be any other sources of grants? The National Train Station, or any other nonprofits that are the source of funding other than
the New Jersey Historic Trust
that are out there? That
there are other sources. National. I'm not familiar with anything that's specific for train stations, but I could do a quick look. National sources tend to be even more difficult to get. I do know that there may be some county money that's available that can be used as a match.
Yeah.
So,
but to that point, Tom, you have to have a project with a viable budget to go shop for these opportunities.
Then we can really start looking at every rock, right? Yeah.
Do we need to ponder this? Do we want to? Go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
So if we were to go on the planning one first, the 3-for-1, does that increase your odds the following year if you've been accepted for the planning grant, and then you go to the next phase, which is the construction one? Do your odds increase if they've funded that first grant?
I would say yes, in the sense of projects that they're not certain have appropriate preservation planning done. It makes them a little bit more nervous. If they know that you've gone through a full preservation planning process, it provides a level of comfort. So there's some, again, there's no guarantee in this, just knowing how many applications there are, but it does impact the conversation. It impacts how it's reviewed, comments that come back about it. So I would say yes.
So that's even more of a reason to go the way that we're leaning here, right? I think
And then
so.
my second question is really more for the mayor and council. Is, if we're going to expend $400,000 approximately on the 1-for-1, is this the number one choice we want to spend those dollars on? If we look at all the projects that we have to tackle, is this where we want to be spending capital dollars on? And so, that's taking the step back. We know this building needs a lot of dollars and attention, and, we just need to make sure it's the right priority. So, just my comment.
Okay. Excellent point. But that being said, do we feel one way versus another about continuing the planning versus the capital? Because to Roger's point about identifying priorities, we are going to be talking about a capital budget in coming weeks. That gives us more time to consider, are we going to go for a larger thing? I personally don't have a concern or an issue funding 25% of a planning grant.
I have no issue with spending $20,000 either, if that's even what it would
Just, the
cost.
80,000 was a very theoretical
Yeah, yeah.
number.
And that's what I
Okay?
said, if that was even what it was gonna
Right.
cost. I thought you actually pulled that out of the air.
So to
Yeah.
rephrase my statement, I don't have a concern or an issue investing 25% of whatever the cost is, if we're getting 75 as a grant, in planning for the possibility of how we're going to deal with this project. There is a finite timeline. At some point, we have to act, or, we're going to be in a situation where it's going to be a lot more expensive, or, you risk not having it as an amenity in town. So, again, I think perhaps to continue planning at this point buys us more time to evaluate priorities. It is a larger source of grant funding to us. It keeps the project moving.
Yeah, I don't mind keeping our grant writer busy and, maximizing our grant ability.
Okay, so would we all feel comfortable giving Mr. Hatch our feedback that we would like to proceed with the route to apply for the 3-to-1 funding and continue the
So the
planning
historic
process?
site management grant.
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Ed can follow up with you tomorrow, but it sounds like that's the direction that the council would like to proceed in.
Great. Then there will be, I'll follow up, there are going to be other things that the council will need to do once you know what the construction documents are going to cost and what the grant application amount is. There's going to have to be a resolution from the council.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you, John.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, discussion items. Item 1, Borough Communications, calendar, newsletter, social media. Laura, can you give the council an update on where we're at with the 2025 calendar, please?
Yes, it was electronically sent to the printer on Friday afternoon after a review by the mayor and Councilman Gullo, myself, and I'll run through with all the departments signing off on their pages. At about 3:55, we got a proof today from the printer, but the glaring thing that I said I don't even want to look at it yet is because they left off the actual business cards that we had sent over to them that plug in those spots. And I don't want to have to proof it twice, so because we proofed the business cards as well to make sure that they're correct. So Melissa sent that back. We should have it in the morning. Postage has already been filled into the post office, so as soon as the final approval is sent over, which I believe will be tomorrow, they'll be mailed out this week and delivered probably by the weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, hearing that, it sounds like we're well on our way to making sure that this hits people's mailboxes.
Mm-hmm.
But I was hoping the council could have a broader discussion that is not going to conclude tonight, but I wanted to have the discussion nonetheless about how we communicate with the residents, right? For whatever reason, this calendar seems to come up a lot, that there's misinformation about this, there's a typo with that, there's something else. Are we choosing the right medium with which to communicate to the residents? So I think that depends on who you ask. You will have people that say, I mark my, January by the date I receive that calendar every year. And I asked one woman why she's so fond of the calendar. It was to list appointments and other obligations on, which to me sounds like, in that instance, any type of a calendar would do. But ours obviously has the borough information in addition to the information somebody would want to list. Knowing that some of that information is subject to change over time, I think all in, we're looking at about an $8,000-9,000 expense on an annual printing of the calendar. And is that the most effective way to communicate? I'm sure it was at a time. Do we want to think about other options that either are in tandem with a select printing of the calendar, but offer electronic means for those who want to opt in to that sort of a communication system? And the example I'll give you, I spoke last meeting about IT. There are towns I would love your phone, which rules everybody's life, mine, yours, kids, and so forth, tells you things all day long. It has push notifications that give you badges, whether you have an Android or an iPhone, and it tells you, the president did this, the sky's falling that, the garbage is getting picked up tomorrow from Recycle Coach. We even have some apps that are already communicating that information from the borough. But, is our time perhaps better vested in starting to think about something like a My Oradell app that takes all of this information from various sources that the borough's pushing out and condenses it into one channel to send to residents? So if you use Recycle Coach right now, you can set notifications, and the night before it will tell me tomorrow is cardboard recycling. It tells me right on my phone. But it tells me it's from Recycle Coach. It doesn't say it's from the borough of Oradell, right? Rave alerts, other things. We're pushing information out on different channels that looks like it's from different channels. It could all come out looking like it's from the borough of Oradell. So I just wanted to start a conversation for us to really think about this. This is, not a change that we're probably going to conclude anytime in the very near future, but I would like to come up with a strategy on how we want to do this going forward so that well in advance of the next year, we're not having the same discussion about what's going on with the calendar, why is this, what about that, this information was wrong again. All great points, but I'm just asking, can we do this better, and if so, what's the right way to do it? And I seek the public's input on that as well. It's not an all or nothing solution, right? So we could print 500 calendars instead of 2,000. And if somebody wants one, you say, I want one, and we send it to you. But for everybody else who's running around all the time, and honestly, a lot of work goes into that calendar for somebody to then just take it and throw it in the garbage or not use it for its intended purpose. But it happens. We all get mail, you get this, I don't need that. People rely on this, like it or not. That's the way communications happen today. So I'm going to be quiet now and open the floor to whoever wants to contribute to the discussion.
Yeah, Mayor. So do I think it's a very efficient way of communications? Absolutely not. But I do get a lot of residents who respond very favorably to the calendar, including my father-in-law. He keeps on asking me as well. An idea is maybe instead of actually having it printed out, maybe we can submit it over our website on PDF form and have the residents print it out themselves in a format that they can actually print it out.
Yeah, I mean, other than what's going on day to day, month to month, there is a part of the calendar that tells you the same thing each year.
Absolutely.
The fire department does this. The police department does that. I mean, once you've been in town once or twice,
Here's how you shovel your driveway.
Yeah, right. Which nobody follows anyway,
Exactly.
because I saw dozens of people throwing snow out into the street on Sunday morning. But part of it is relative and part of it is repetitive. So,
Jim, I also think that the minute you print it, the minute the information's incorrect. And what I mean by that is not because there's errors, it's things change. Dates get moved. There's rescheduling. Like, you look at Family Day that we changed this. Like, there's other things that are going to happen that by having things digitally, it's going to be 99% accurate.
Right.
So to your point about push notification, and I respect the fact that some people like to consume their information specifically traditional paper way. I also feel like the way we are all, regardless of age, consuming information or information is being pushed to us, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to not only consume it on the receiver side, but also us pushing it out. I mean, there are content management platforms, to your point, one app. You enter in the information, you literally click a box, hit OK, it goes out to the subscriber list.
right. Anyone else?
Yeah, it certainly makes sense to look at it. I do like the calendar, but to Councilman Kern's point, yeah, PDF on the screen that has a picture of the month of February that I can click on, and it has, what do I look at? Garbage? Is it bottles or paper or whatever? Those kind of things that I forget. So they do change, but if that's updated, and it's all in the data, that's to make sure that it's updated, but that would be valued. Can I print it out? It is a nice community thing to have our kids or Girl Scouts or the OPS kids do drawings, so there's a nice feel to that.
Yep.
And we can, maybe your point of, yes, if it's limiting the amount and have them in the Borough Hall here and have 500 of them and see, it's pretty easy to come down here or have them at the library, and, you know, if that's a way right there to save a heck of a lot of money and then also have it online, that probably makes some sense, yeah. But,
Okay, so we'll do some research and we'll continue this conversation. You know, obviously, no decisions are made here, and, you know, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not saying we should kill the calendar. I'm merely saying we should have a discussion about it.
Here's what I'll say, just to add to the last final comment. Let's not reinvent the wheel. I'm sure there are towns already out there doing this, and that we can just find out which system they're doing and
there absolutely
populate with our information. I mean, let's try not to. If we're going to make a decision, let's just do it. Is my point.
Okay. Next item is a tree ordinance. So again, another item for discussion. This came up recently with regard to clear-cutting lots. So apparently we have an ordinance on the books that does act retroactively, that you are prohibited from clear-cutting your lot if you are doing it as a result of modifying the footprint of your home or building a new home because you took the old one down. It doesn't say anything about just clear-cutting your lot, period. So I wanted to see how the council felt about that. The ordinance committee would love some feedback from the council. I think the intent to not clear-cut a lot is pretty clear, right? I don't know why it's specific to modifying the footprint of or constructing a home versus just clear-cutting, period. And it's not saying you can't take a tree down. It's not saying you can't take a couple trees down. It says you can't go in and clear-cut the whole lot. Which I think we would all agree is not a good thing to do. So I just wanted to see how the council felt about it so we can give some feedback to the ordinance committee as they sort of look at whether or not this is something that needs to be applied more broadly.
It would be helpful for me to have a copy of the ordinance. We do have one, right? It currently exists.
It's on E-code, yeah.
Yeah, and just to see a copy of that, maybe I could look it up. But what do we have right now? I know, I think Councilman Carnival, this has been going on for years, and what it is now, and if you have to replant and those types of things, and it'd be helpful to see where we.
Just a little history.
Go ahead.
As to why it was ended up there as opposed to full clear cutting is there was a lot of pushback. This was sort of the compromise position based on that. I think at the time when it was compromised, there was always an intent to take it further, and you're at the point now where we're ready to take it a little further.
Well, I'm putting it out there for us to have the discussion. I'm not, look, I'm all about property owners' rights, but I also think that there can be an adverse effect to the aesthetic of the community. And again, I'm not saying you can't take trees down, but to go in and just wipe your lot clean of every tree on the lot.
Look, reality is Bendelius' farm is what now, 50 years old? You know almost when you cross directly from the latch string into Greenway that there's a difference.
Right.
I mean, that's the best example that I can give of why you don't clear cut. Is there's a significant difference when you drive and shift to that property.
Okay. Ted, I'm sorry. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, my question was answered.
Okay. All right. I will provide feedback to Council President Carnival, as I know he's looking at this, and we may have it up for discussion again. If anybody has any suggestions, please feel free to share it with him.
Well, Mayor, just one point. Maybe we can ask our our building department as well, because they would be in charge of enforcing this particular ordinance that we have on our books, and their input as well, I think, would be very helpful.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Last item on the discussion items is the letter in your packets from the Oradell Arts Fest requesting support and assistance for their festival. Marguerite's here. I don't know if you have anything you want to add other than the letter, or you want to talk a little bit about the festival. If you want to come up to the table, we always love to hear from you.
Sure, I'm here representing the Oradell Arts Fest team, and we're a subcommittee of the Oradell Environmental and Beautification Committee, and we have a large group of community volunteers in addition to members from the committee. We received a grant from local arts project grant from Bergen County for $5,800 to run the Arts Fest this year. In the past years, we've always done it on the second Sunday of June, and this seems to be a good date. It's kind of after Memorial Day and before people leave for vacation, and the weather's nice. So we're asking for that date again.
What's the actual date?
It's Sunday, June 8th.
Let me check my calendar and see if it's clear on there.
Oh, you have it on your phone? Great, Roger. You pulled that off at Oradell.org. That's wonderful. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Margaret.
Yeah, that's what we put in the application too. So we're hoping that date would work out. Right now, we would like to use the properties that we used last year: the senior lot, the senior building, post office parking lot, Sherrard Park, Veldrin Way, and possibly Hague Park if we have a lot of overflow. And we would need support from the borough in terms of parking assistance, crossing guards, DPW, the showmobile, rent the senior center out for free, of course. Basically that would be it, and the committee would run it, I think, very similar to last year. We would have performances at the showmobile. We would have visual artists come and vendors, food vendors, local community artists, a children's area for arts and crafts and learning about different types of arts and mediums. We would have a literary section with poets and writers who are local to our community. Other creative ideas are always welcome. And we're also looking for volunteers to join the Oradell Arts Fest team. It's a big undertaking, and I know there's a lot of talent out in Oradell, so if you want to come and share it with us, that would be really amazing.
Margaret, can you do, or maybe I'll work with Councilman Kelly, could you, especially for volunteers, could we put that up on the electronic sign?
Yes, I have a poster already. I was just waiting for approval.
Yeah, no, also the just the electronic sign, but we can certainly put posters up in, public places,
okay,
whatever.
So that would be...
I know you need them now.
Yeah, so that would be approved to put on the sign then?
Well, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure like last year, it's a date change and probably still graphically pleasing. So
okay,
if you could just share it with Laura,
okay,
that'd be great, and we can get it up and running.
And you're asking for Veldrin Avenue to be closed, right?
Yes, because people are parking behind the library there, and they're walking, down Oradell Avenue, across Kinderkamack, and then you have people coming from Sherrard Park to the post office lot, to the senior center. So there's a lot of back and forth. You just have to have it closed. It's too dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah. And parking is an issue because last year we had over 1,200 people come to the festival. It's open to all of Bergen County. So, we could really use some help with parking.
But thank you.
Bless you, Ed.
Okay.
So just a couple of things, if I can tag on. Just again to thank Margaret and her leadership. Just year-round work. That day also, there were events at the library that had last 2 years packed.
Right.
The Blauvelt Museum had their highest attendance ever also. So it was just a wonderful day, and and thank you for that. It's just just a wonderful day.
Well, thank you very much.
Consensus on any issues with supporting the requests from the Arts Fest team?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, it's a great event. Hopefully the weather cooperates.
Okay. Absolutely.
That's it.
Great.
Yeah, if the weather doesn't cooperate, we're asking also to have the multipurpose room here at the Borough Hall, maybe some hallways or whatever. We'll use the library and the senior center, and hopefully we can make things work that way.
Okay, great.
As
Sounds like it's a go.
We're good to go for the 8th?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marguerite.
Okay, next item on the agenda is old business. Anybody have any old business to come before the council? If not, entertain any new business to come before the council.
I have one thing, Mayor. Happy to announce that this year Ramadan is February 28th through Sunday, March 30th. And the borough will again be hosting a crescent moon lighting ceremony on Friday, February 21st at 5 p.m. Borough Hall. Details will be more readily available at the borough website. But again, Friday, February 21st, we will be hosting our crescent moon lighting ceremony in honor of Ramadan.
Thank you, Councilman Gallo. Anybody else have new business to come before the council?
I have a couple of things, and Mayor, excuse me, maybe the last time I was on the council, it was at the end of the meeting. I don't know. I remember talking about end of meeting. So I don't, if this is the time, I want to make sure that
This is it.
that it's now. A couple of things. I just want to say I did catch the planning board meeting. I totally agree with what you said, and with you in terms of attendance to meetings, etc. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I have been involved with the seniors and chatting with them, just as pedestrian safety, and I know our public safety area is working on that, but at the senior center before we meet next on the 25th at noon, open to all of the residents, there's going to be a pedestrian and driver safety program put out by Street Smart New Jersey, which may have been the group that was here last time. So it's open to the public and freight refreshments, again, February 25th at noon at the senior center. And, that's obviously a high point on our job here, so maybe we can get that on a borough website or on a neon sign to let people know what's going on there and to encourage them to attend. A couple of other things that I need, just business related, is we're talking about grants. I don't want to make sure, Mr. Hines, that I have it squared what the process is to, if there are grant opportunities out there. I mentioned the Sustainable New Jersey grant and then the seniors grant. For the Sustainable New Jersey, we do need to approve just really rubber stamp the green team. So that would be a help if we could do that, and it's, in the near future we need to do that. As well as to reappoint the senior advisory committee members.
Those are set for the next meeting, Tom.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, if there's any other, if I did catch a note from Laura in terms of agenda items, is there a 2-week ask rather than, obviously it would make sense rather than the day before, right? Is that
So
kind of
the mayor asked me to circulate the same memo that was sent to the department heads, to the mayor and council, just to give you the same deadline in order for materials to be sent to me to collate so that we can present it at the the review meeting, which is a week prior to the council meeting.
whether it's work session or our main meeting, right? Yep.
So we don't really define work session public anymore. Last year, the admin code was adjusted to, and you'll see this on the calendar, it just says meeting. Even though I think I still delineate it possibly here on the agenda, just because we do actionable things at the end. We take action at both meetings now. So they're just, in essence, they're joint meetings. Every meeting is an actionable meeting.
Okay, unless there's an urgency, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have, Mayor, thanks.
Okay, Tom, thank you. If there's no more new business, I'll entertain a motion to open to the public for non-agenda items only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, each speaker shall have one turn and not exceed 5 minutes. Please identify yourself at the microphone and remain courteous.
Didn't get up yet. She started. Really? Okay. I'm just watching. Paul Atsunas, I want to talk to you tonight about a few things. This article that I talked about last time about the affordable housing in Paramus, the 1,000 units. Well, the article goes on, and this is where I got my information, and it says the obligations of Paramus agreed to mandate of 1,000 units. My reference to this article of 200 units is that the article stated, quote, hopeful that a study of developable land will convince the state to reduce that obligation to as low as 250 units. Just wanted to clear that up.
Paul, just one thing, that you made those comments to the planning board, not the
That's
council.
right. And I was going to say that,
Okay.
yeah, to the planning board, but I wanted to clear it up tonight. Now, in today's record, it was stated that an additional 2 towns joined the fight to adjust the law on affordable housing, bringing the total to 28 in the coalition. And another article mentioned changes in zoning laws in Teaneck on accessory units being used by single-family homes for affordable housing, such as Governor Murphy's garage housing a migrant. So he stuck his foot in this one. Now, I don't know if we are going to change zoning laws in order to accommodate affordable housing in this way. I think it will create more problems. I hope we don't. Now, on another note, the puzzle at the DPW. Many residents are not informed that we have a cardboard crusher behind the paper, plastic, and bottle bins. They are throwing their cardboards in the paper bin, and I met a couple there and told them about the cardboard crusher. And they did so use it. And they told me that they wouldn't have had known about it if I hadn't told them about it. And so we need a sign with an arrow directing the residents to the crusher for the cardboard. This will result in saving time of our employees that have to remove the cardboard from the paper bin and bring it to the crusher when they could be doing something else. On the metal area, residents are throwing a variety of items such as electronics, carpets, glass, styrofoam, and other garbage. That results in our employees having to sort out and deposit these items in the proper containers when they could be doing something else. So, now as for the calendar coming out, and we discussed this here, I think that we should still have a calendar, but we should have a calendar cut smaller, black and white, saying what we need. We don't need color and all those fancy things, and a smaller little stand-up calendar would be beneficial to people. Okay. Now, are we going to have a farmer's market in Oradell? That's one question this year. Okay. And then when the seniors meet, where will we meet when the demolition of the kitchen begins? We wanted to know that. And also on the minutes. Now, I noticed I'm going to go on the site to look at the minutes. The planning board last minutes that are posted are April 2024. The zoning board's last minutes posted are May 2024. The mayor and council minutes last posted on there is September 2024. The Board of Health minutes are September 2024, and the Library Board of Trustees minutes are October 2024. Now, in the past, we were doing catch-up on this, and all of a sudden we fell behind again. And I don't know why. You know, is it there's too much work in the zoning office, and we can't get to do the minutes and actually post them? Well, maybe the minutes are done, and we haven't posted them. I don't know. So these are my questions that I ask, and on this gentleman that was here tonight, and I wanted to talk to him. I asked him about the water coming in on hurricanes and stuff like that, because I know that water goes all the way up to the railroad tracks on big hurricanes. And he says that they would have to put a camera down there and investigate what they can do about it. So I think that's one of the first things that we have to look at, and I think it's very important to try to solve that problem of the water seepage into the basement of the and thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Mayor, I would like to address the DPW issue that Paul brought up.
Can we finish the public comment first?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Thank you. Sam?
Sam Trips is 327 Maple Avenue. I want to comment about the farmer's market. If there is going to be one, now's the time to start talking, because you need to get your vendors and the farmer in place, because there's a lot of competition out there and everybody makes their commitments. So any later than now is jeopardizing if it's going to open on, the first Sunday in June. And you need somebody who's going to dedicate every Sunday from June to Thanksgiving. They're willing to give up their time, and they have to be the meet and greet and set up and tear down. I mean, it's a lot of work. There's a pleasure to it, but you got to be wanting to do it. And it needs to be a volunteer, I believe, somebody who lives in the town. When it was beautification and environmental, it worked well for 10 years. So, but now's the time. Otherwise, another year might go by. The sign's still there. People do ask. Anyway, what I really wanted to talk about, the train station presentation was really good. It's a long time coming. There's a great architect there. I think if anybody has it in their head that it's going to cost too much money, I think you should take it out of your head, because it's the jewel of our community. It's you see it in pictures. It was in the New York Times a few years ago. If you're thinking of living in the real estate section, what do they show? The train station, that section of town. So you could nickel and dime it and say, well, there's other priorities. Well, yeah, there are. But the historic part of the town is our sailing pitch too. I mean, there are new residents coming into town, but they're coming into town because of the look of the town. So when you start losing that, it just becomes a vanilla location like any place else. What I wanted to add too, back in 2008, I had permission from the administrator at the time was Wolfgang Albrecht, and he gave me permission to get up in the attic. And I thought, well, it'd be nice to have those stained glass windows light up a little bit, light in the attic. And I did. Didn't hardwire them. There's no electricity up there, except, there's some old knob and post that's disconnected. But other than that, there's no way to, you'd have to run the line down. But it worked for a while. I had it on a timer, it'd go off at 12 o'clock, and it was a nice little feature. Well, when I discovered, when I got up to I didn't know how to get to the attic, so I lifted the panels in the drop ceiling panels in that little waiting room, as the architect spoke tonight, and that ceiling is about 4 to 5 feet lower than the original wainscoting ceiling, which was the same height as the main waiting room. So I think that wasn't so much that was the main room, I think, was where the ticket office was. I don't think so it seems to me that they added the wall later, maybe in the 60s or 70s, to give it a ticket look. Who knows if it was for vanity, I'm not sure if it was ever really used. So taking that wall down would be a great idea. And somebody actually brought it up, maybe making that room a meeting room. We have our conference rooms here, but maybe committees can meet there too. So that if you really think it out, they've covered a lot of bases. I looked at the report, and it looks like they covered a lot of things. They give it a thorough once-over. But getting back to the ceiling, it's a shame because on the last restoration, that's when the drop ceiling went up, and they tore half the wainscoting ceiling down. So when you go up, you see the attic and just a little bit of ceiling. So I would definitely include the restoration of that, and then not wait for so much for the grant. This is something we can do. We can do not real cheap, but less expensive and have a useful room while we're waiting for those grants. You know, but anyway, one other comment: it's the jewel of the town, and I don't think any thought should be about not doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. There's nobody else for public comment on non-agenda items. I'd ask for a motion to close.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move for a motion to open for public comment on consent agenda items only. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Well, Soonest, I have really one question, and I'd like to have answered because I couldn't find this on the Mylar in the room outside. Block 414, I couldn't find a block 414 on the Mylar. Lot 14. Where is that? Who is that
Don't know.
building? Block 414?
We can find out.
Lot 14?
We'll find out. This has to do with a tax appeal, I'm sure. Ed?
I would imagine so, Mayor.
It says McNerney and
Probably a
Associates.
tax report for a tax appeal.
Okay.
I just want to know what the building is.
I don't know
It's
right this
across from
second.
Schreiber's, I
Well,
think.
let's not think.
Sure, yeah.
He can find out. The administrator can get you the answer in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else for consent agenda? If not, entertain a motion to close to the public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Councilman Kern?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the resident's question that was brought up earlier about the DPW signs at the recycling center. I did instruct our superintendent to look at, adding new signs. I definitely agree. Some of the signs are either missing or unreadable, so that's in the works. Second item is the train station basement. I don't think it was mentioned in the preservation plan earlier today, but I do believe that the DPW superintendent did put a sump pump in there that they installed. So that's at least one thing that we did, and maybe we can cross off the list.
Great, thank you. And just to address the farmer's market, we're currently working on that, Sam. We're currently working on a farmer's market. I will caution you, due to falling vendors and high competition for vendors, it may not be on a Sunday. But we're working on finding the most appropriate person to come meet the borough's needs. So more to report on that.
Sunday is actually the best day to have it in this town.
I get it, but we have to work with whoever's available. If we want to have it, we may have to flex a little bit. So more to report on that later. Sunday is certainly our first choice. Okay. Laura, can we have the correspondence read into the record, please?
Item 1 is the police report for January 2025. Item 2 is a thank you note submitted by Councilman Tashian.
Thank you. Next item is approval of minutes. Anybody have any questions, comments, corrections on the meeting of 1/5/25? What? I'm sorry, on the Sinai Dye meeting. Any corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for January 5th, 2025 Sinai Dye meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So for the reorganization meeting on January 5th, any comments, corrections, omissions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the reorganization meeting of January 5th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And finally, we have any questions, comments, or omissions for the minutes of the meeting of January 14th, 2025? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda. Does any member of the council wish to pull a resolution for a separate vote or further discussion?
Mayor, I have a couple of things, just a couple of minor things. I'm hopeful, 2572, I would think that would be Midland Road as opposed to Midland Avenue. Midland Avenue, I think is Paramus, but Midland Road is, I'm assuming that that's what that's for. I don't know if that's a big deal, but that one.
Did you put that on here? That's your street, isn't it?
I think you need to abstain from this vote.
That's right. Maybe I need to say yes.
So noted.
The other 2567, is that an annual, that went into the ordinances from 2000? Is that something, it's a one-off each year? Or is
Yes.
Is it
It's written that it's at the council's discretion
each year?
each year.
Okay, so that'll come up each year, okay.
Correct.
And the last one, if you can just educate me, that I know this has gone back and forth, 2571 in terms of the fireworks, that I know we've had them every other year, every third year, or every year, and how that in the past we've had fundraisers, et cetera, and where are you with that?
So I believe we're on the track to have fireworks annually now. This is to lock in the contract. I believe that we will be pursuing alternate funding routes to be able to subsidize the cost of the fireworks, but we need to lock in the date with the contract.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. If nobody has any further questions or wishes to pull a resolution for a separate vote, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Tashian?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Gullo?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, it does not require a vote, but mayor's appointment to the planning board. Resolution 2573 appoints William Snyder to fulfill an unexpired term held by one Mr. Thomas Kelly, big shoes to fill, ending 12/31/26. And the second one is the appointment of Michael Forte to fill an unexpired term of alternate number 1, ending 12/31/26. Very simply put, these two gentlemen were both alternates, and they've been elevated a rank on the planning board. We will have a second alternate coming before the board in a future meeting. If there's no other business before the council tonight, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. So, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meeting Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, whereas the mayor of the council of Oradell is the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the borough of Oradell as follows: that a non-public meeting be held of the mayor and council. The public shall be excluded from discussion from the portion of the meeting in which the below listed matters to be discussed, real estate contract negotiations. It is anticipated at this time that above stated subject matter will be made public within 60 days or as soon thereafter, as it is deemed to be in the public interest to do so. This resolution shall take effect immediately. I'll entertain a motion to enter into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We will be back to end the meeting in about 10 minutes.
Well, it's just
Thank you.